So good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming, and I would like to thank VMS Software again for the opportunity to be here today and present you a software which is called VMS Navigator, which is a double-pane file manager with all the basic features a file management tool needs, but also supplemented with some unique features. But first, I would like to briefly introduce myself. My name is David Marcsa. I am a programmer from Hungary. In terms of my qualifications, a Bachelor of Computer Science Engineering with System Engineering specialization. I have a job as programmer and work mainly with the C programming language with about 10 or 15 years of experience. And I also have a little bit passion for graphics. But let's start. What does a file manager mean for me? Well, if we have an operating system and we have a user who performs tasks on this system, we may think about the file manager as a layer between the two. And what can we achieve with a file management layer? Well, for example, we can create a better visual overview because a file management layer may provide a clearer and more organized way to view and to interact with files, which may be crucial because 80% of the information we gather daily comes through our visual senses. The second one, an easier management, because not all users want to learn long and complicated commands, even if OpenVMS has very short commands. Many people prefer a service which allows them to interact with the system in a more intuitive and accessible way. And by creating, for example, shortcut keys or more friendly interfaces, any system may become easier to use, even for those with less technical knowledge. My principle, which may be not 100% correct, is that what is easier is faster, and what is faster may be cheaper, because the less time it takes to complete a task, the more efficient the work may become. The third one, creating new features, because with a file management layer, we may add new features to the system, seemingly to the operating system, because, of course, these are, in fact, not actually part of the operating system itself, but they may act as though they are. And by integrating additional functionalities, the users may experience new capabilities. And I think that this is the most exciting, but also most challenging part of the whole project, because really we can add anything that has a meaningful value, a practical use, or a common sense. We can also add features which have no practical use, but that would be nonsense, of course. And the fourth one is educational purposes. Some of you may already know that this project started as a university thesis topic, so it features a multi-100-page documentation, which is also available if you are a university student in Hungary. And it may help students to learn and to better understand, for example, about the expected and unexpected problems in case of a file manager, what even a software like this should be prepared for, or maybe how to demonstrate the advantages of an operating system through software. So I try to focus on these four concepts while creating this navigator, which, by the way, looks like this. This is a live screen from a PuTTY terminal emulator, and I would like to continue with a live demonstration, and hopefully we will see no crashes, but we will see some examples for these four concepts I mentioned in the last minutes. So by creating a surface with two panels and assigning different colors for different file types and displaying additional information like file size and last modification date, we may create that better visual overview I was talking about. And of course, we may change the file, we may sort the files not just by file name, but also by extension, version number, and size in either ascending or descending order, which may give us a more organized view also. And of course, we have all the basic features, so all the basic navigation methods as in common file manager. So we may use the up and down key to move to the preview and to the next files, use the page up and page down key to flip through pages, use the home and the end key to jump to the beginning or to the end of a directory. I added some fast jumping methods. For example, if you press any A to Z key on the keyboard, for example, now I press the B key, you jump to the first file starting with that letter, and pressing that key again will move you to the next file. Now I press the Z. Of course, you may use this for directories also combined with the Shift key, and this gives you a pretty fast way to navigate through an entire directory structure. And of course, we have a search option. Of course, if I type in anything, sorry, I mistyped. But of course, this file doesn't exist in this directory. And of course, we may interact with files. Maybe the most common interaction is to open a file with a shortcut key. We can open a file in an editor and load the entire file or just the beginning of a file into an editor. I added a quick preview because due to my work, I often look into files output content to check the output content and needed a faster method. So there is a little quick preview where you can view the beginning of any file on the inactive panel side, which sometimes saves time. But we have all the basic file-associated functions implemented, so we can create, rename, copy, move, and delete files, directories, and entire directory structures. So there are no limitations on that. Let's search for an empty directory. This should be an empty directory, but it's not. So we select all the files and I hit delete, and now we make this an empty directory. And it's so great that this is a toy machine and one of the cheapest notebooks available on the market. So you saw that little progress bar while the task performs. So let's for example, enter this directory and select a couple of files. We have different methods to select files. For example, now I type .com and we have all the com files selected. Of course, I can add files to the selection. Now, all the C files are added to the selection. Of course, I can remove from the selection. I also can add files by date. For example, I add all the files which were modified after the 30th of April. And maybe one mistake is that this is now in the Hungarian date format, but now I add all the files which were last modified in May. So we also can remove like this and have different selecting methods. But let's do it very simple, and let's hit Control and A and select all the files. And of course, we see some basic information about the selected files and the size, and also our position in the directory and the amount of subdirectories and files in this directory. But let's simply just hit F5, which is commonly the copy shortcut key, and let's hit enter, and we will see that nice progress bar again, because this is a slow machine, and we see while this performs. But let's do some funny thing, and let's select these files again, and let's hit F5 again. Of course, now files with the same name, extension, and version number already exist in the destination directory. This is, of course, intentional. Let's hit this enter key. So it was a concept that every time an event occurs during file management, that the user should receive an appropriate notification about that event. Which event is now that the file name and the extension already exist in this directory. So all the files exist with this name, extension, and version number, but I can still decide whether I want to copy them and create them with a larger version number. But of course, I don't have to hit yes every time. I can make it remember this option, and now it knows what to do. But staying at the topic of copying, just a very small but sometimes very, very useful implementation is the clipboard style copy-paste function I implemented, because sometimes I wanted to copy files and paste files without navigating to another directory on the other panel. And we have this file here, global.c, and I just press the copy, as we usually press Ctrl-C multiple times in Windows. and navigate somewhere else. This is an empty directory, and hit the paste key, and now we have this file automatically copied and created with a larger version number in this directory, which is maybe a useful function. But let's do some funny thing, and let's delete this file, and let's recreate a file with the same name, extension, and version number. Of course, this file is not the same file we just copied to the clipboard. But what will happen if I hit the paste key? What would happen in Windows? Well, the situation is that in Windows, the system, the file manager in Windows would automatically copy the newly created file because the file names match, which is not a problem. It's the feature how it works. But I wanted to do something else. So if I hit the paste key now, of course, the software notifies us that although the file names match, this file is not the same file we copied. So maybe this simple little trick also may serve as an educational purpose, allowing students to understand that that there is a file ID, why there is, for example, a file ID, and what to use it for in a practical way, for example. And I also wanted to handle such little events also, because I always try to achieve to write a good software. I don't say that I achieved writing a good software, but I always try to achieve writing a good software. And now I just hit the no key. But what new features can we implement? Because I said that this is the most exciting and also most challenging part. Well, sometimes people give us ideas without even realizing it. And this is how the next feature was implemented. Maybe it happened to you too if you are a system administrator, that a user accidentally deleted some files they didn't mean to, and they asked help to whether we can restore them. And once someone said that, too bad there is no recycle bin. And well, on a file management layer, we may create such a feature like a recycle bin and give users the freedom to manage it within the quota limit. And for example, let's enter this data directory and sort this by size. And we see that this apple.data file is the largest, and we have a different deleting option. And the software asks us whether we want to move this file to the recycle bin. I will hit the yes key, and you will see that the visual segment at the bottom part of the file manager, these lines will change. So why did it change? I think you know this. The white line shows your free quota values, and the red line shows your used quota values, and the yellow line shows the size of the recycle bin. Of course, you can reset these files to the original location. And there is one more interesting feature implemented. We have this settings panel for the Navigator, and this option is the recycle bin deleting days, which means that we can specify after how many days, depending on the time the file was placed in the recycle bin, we want the program to automatically remove and delete it forever. Of course, we can set this to a minimal time of days and also to infinite days. And I think that in addition to the ability to manage this independently, sometimes the users may feel more secure about their files. Some users already use this software, and they think that this is a great implementation. Of course, we can, with a shortcut key, remove the older versions of a file. So for example, now it says that 2 versions exist from this file in this directory. Whether I want to delete the lower versions, I hit yes. One was deleted. I can perform this to an entire directory, and now all these files are deleted. And but as we can't have every single command, every single DCR command included as a shortcut key, because we would run out of shortcut keys, of course, we may input DCR commands. However, there are some important criteria regarding the execution of DCR commands, which I try to achieve. The first, that the user should be able to issue any command available in the DCL language, just as they were doing it outside the Navigator program. The second one, that the user should be able to interrupt the execution of these commands and return to the Navigator software. And the third one, that the speed of the command execution should not differ from that of a command line execution. I don't say that I achieved all of this, but this was the goal. So, for example, we can input a command, for example, to list, for example, just the file information for a file, and we can see it just as we were doing it. But of course, we have, for example, a little interface for this same task as well. And for example, since I often forget the correct syntax for a lot of commands, I implemented, for example, this little feature to set the UIC-based rights for the system owner group and word groups. So you can set the read, write, execute, and delete rights with this simple 4x4 matrix-like table. And for example, let's change something and let's hit validation. And additionally, we can decide whether we want to apply these changes to the entire directory structure or maybe just this directory file. And of course, we get a nice notification about whether it was successful or not. Of course, we can do this for a couple of selected files. So if I select all the conf files in a directory, I can do the same for a couple of selected files. But of course, we may not only perform tasks in our own directories, we may access any mounted device to the system, and we get some basic information about them, the volume name, the total size, the free space, and all this in %. And the software pre-checks the access to these devices. So for example, any device which we may not read are highlighted with yellow. And the first and the last entries on this page are special. The first one always takes you to the login directory, and the last one always opens the same directory currently open on the inactive panel. Both are sometimes very useful. Of course, the software remembers which directory you last accessed on a device, so it's also pretty, I think, useful. But of course, we have, for example, other panels also. For example, we have this detailed search option. For example, let's search for all the C files, which include, maybe include will be included in every C file. And we see the results in a nice result sub-window. And very important that the software also handles situations when someone deletes one of these files, for example, this file, while we are navigating through this result sub-window, because it may happen. And you wouldn't believe it, but there are some very expensive file managers out on the market for different operating systems, which we managed to crash just because they leave out the simple check to verify whether this file still exists when I hit this enter key. But now, of course, this exists, and we jump right to this directory. And now I would like to open another PowerPoint. So as I told you, I began to work on this project as a university thesis topic. So it features a multi-100-page documentation, and not only because of this, but because it's the right approach to create a software like this. And additionally, it demonstrates the operation of each function using these flow charts so that bug fixes and future developments are more easy. For example, this is the flow chart, and if the text is too small, I have this printed out. This is the flow chart which shows us what happens when we hit that, after we hit that enter key when we select a device in the selecting device window. And it turned out that this is the easiest method, and this is not a complicated flowchart, but this is the easiest method to make sure that the software never crashes and the user always gets a nice notification about what happened. Because we may navigate through that window when we select a device, and maybe a funny system administrator removes that or dismounts that device while we are navigating through that list, and we don't want the software to crash. And you know, if we write a software, we always, or a group always has IDs. A group always plans, and there is a group who does the coding, a group makes the test, and a group fixes the bugs. None of these processes are hard, actually. I think the real problem arises when we do all these steps ourselves, which may lead to very funny and very amusing situations, such as, for example, when an ID seemed very simple while planning, but later it turned out to be too complex to code, or maybe just my coding knowledge is not enough. Also, it's funny when we fix the bugs in our own code. So sometimes we don't really, sometimes we find the bugs in other people's codes easier than our own codes. But the software has a lot of features, and some which I couldn't show you because I only have now 20 minutes. But it has a lot of basic functions, some unique features, some file-associated functions, some helping aids, some system administrator tools. For example, it can check the activity if you are active or not. You can change the owner of directories and files. It has multiple languages. I also try to create a unique visual style so that it wouldn't be a copy of Norton Commander, DOS Navigator, or other file managers, but still this double pane file manager. And I hope everyone is familiar with this name, Andrew Tannenbaum. Maybe I'm not correct if he's the godfather of operating systems, or maybe he thinks. But he also heard about this file manager because sometimes we exchanged emails, and this is what he said about Open VMS. I didn't know that VMS is still around. I imagine it a bit of niche system by now, which he said this year. So if you don't agree with him, and I don't agree with Andrew Tannenbaum, this is his email address. So feel free to write him a message. Yes. But my opinion is that OpenVMS is a system of elegance, and it is dignified, and it deserves a file manager worth of this legacy. And as this is not a final software, of course, it has a lot of great features, and some people already test it. But you may reach me on this website, and I don't think that this software will be open source because too much work is, I think, involved. But I would like to have this software available for the community as well. And as I run out of time, I thank you for attending my presentation.
How many of you are really impressed? Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, second question was about like how do you plan to distribute it?
How do I plan
to distribute it? Because I can see it's coming to people.
I don't know yet. There are some bugs which I have to fix. I started to work on this on OpenVMS 8.3. And when I first compiled it on x86, I had a lot of bugs, about a dozen. 11 I managed to fix, but there is one bug which I managed to hide here, which I can't fix on my own. So I will have to speak with someone who is working on the compiler, because I don't really know if it's a bug in my code or somewhere else. It may be in my code.
Direct it to me and we will connect you.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, but I don't really think that I would like to make a profit on this. So
it's nice to make profit.
Yes, it's nice to make profit, but I'm not sure yet. So
But you promised that it will crash, but it works great. I know.
Yes,
that.
it's some
You
screen
know.
issues. So maybe you notice that there are some screen issues.
Yeah.
So it doesn't crash. So
What screen management system do you use? For the screen output, what software?
we tried different ones. So I have the documentation here. We tried it with virtual display, with the SMG virtual display, and but with different ones also. But on x86 we have some troubles.
Like this is SMG,
This is an x86.
yes, but the software behind it. Is it screen management system or?
Yes.
Okay.
And I propose you one feature that you might wish to consider add. Personally, occasionally, mostly on Windows sadly, but I often need to compare ton of files. Like I have set of files in one directory and I have another set of files in another directory. And then you want to see how many or which files are different, which files were in this directory but are missing here, and other way around.
Now there is one thing which similar, which is not as complex as you thought, but if you select any two files anywhere, so in different panels, you press a shortcut key and you see the differences.
Yeah, but I
yes, for another directory.
For entire directory structures. I
always say if someone has a plan and makes, for example, a flow chart of what he wants, it's 100% that it may be possible to code.
That comparing single file to comparing content of a directory,
yes.
All the files in those directories and even on the directory structures. Sometimes it's very useful to see. Actually, I use backup/compare. Very recently used for that purpose.
It's easy to use. You just checkpoint the files to make a check for each file. Basically, you can find duplicates with that.
On Windows, I would use WinMerge tool. It's very useful to kind of add two directory structures and just select them and WinMerge. And then you get to see this is here, but missing here. This is here, missing there. And these files are same and those files are different.
So I think that adding any feature is not hard when someone does what he wants. The real problem is if someone says that make some great features, like what? So if someone tells me to code something like a recycle bin and they tell us what they want, then it's easier.
Yes, I use something called free file sync on Windows to synchronize directories, and you could run a compare, and then it will then give you a list of what's missing on one side, what's and also what's different in date and time. So I understand the functionality of it. Yeah, it just, and then you can synchronize each way.
Yeah.
Just depending
It's a good
mirror or yeah.
Yeah, so to add another question to what was asked. So what you demonstrated with files to the left and preview to the right, you can basically have two previews, like two files. So it's like
no, that's fine because the preview is always open on the inactive panel.
Okay, yeah.
So
So just in some file managers, you could like here, that there, so it's like. Okay.
I wrote the software twice, actually, because first I started to code it to see whether it's possible or not. And then I rewrote the whole project to match the university's standards so that the code is not really messy. And so the second time I wrote the code, it was much more easy to write. So
Yeah, it just sometimes it's nice to compare contents of two files. So you like open in the right pane from
yes.
the right pane directory space. And then on the left pane, and you got two followed by.
Yes.
Is it compatible with ODS5?
I believe yes. Yes.
What happens if the file is 5 minutes
Too long.
too long?
Well, we tried this with. I don't know if you know the Hungarian language, which has these and a. So this kind of letters.
Yeah.
And we tried it with file names which we created on Windows, which were I think 100 characters long. It doesn't crash, but there are some bugs.
It's so great that you're from the country which.
Yes,
is
yes.
additional.
Yes, but I don't let you type so you can type the A letter. So if you hit this A on the keyboard, you won't be able to type it.
I was working in a Danish company and they had problems with their own software, not having a. And
Yes.
First here, I mean, you had good ways of managing protection of files. You also manage ACLs and things for files. And
Not yet.
not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet. But I plan with what I started, which I didn't show you, to change the owner of files. So if you press the key, you will see a list of the users who are currently on the system, and you may give the.
Okay, so we'll try to add a little
Yes,
bit
yes,
extra logic
yes.
and support there.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I just started that, so it's not implemented yet.
Because that would probably be useful to some people
Yes.
on how to set up these.
And there are
A little bit complicated at
A lot of
times.
companies around the world,
Yeah.
it turned out, who still use VMS like I do for programming, writing C or COBOL code, and who struggle with always set default, or they
Yeah.
manage some shortcut keys, but or some of them use different methods. But actually, there are a lot of companies who still use that hard old way. So
Mhm.
I hope it will reach many people.
Notice you're using keys F1 to F5,
Yes.
that probably problem with this on the terminal later.
I don't think I tried it with PuTTY and PowerTerm. It works fine. Maybe there is some terminal emulator Kitty or something like that. But I did not try it with different. I think VMS software says on the website to use PuTTY, as far as I remember.
Traditionally, you can't press those keys, but not easily anyway, because they're local functions for certain. So it's a simple, but it's very way.
For F6 you can't use, for example. F3 you can't, but
Yeah.
I think all the other you can set.
Feature suggestion.
Okay, I'm happy to hear.
I think most of us have run into backup save sets that have been transferred using FTP. And now the format is wrong. See a BCK file and maybe put an exclamation mark in there if it's in Streamlab format. And maybe even having key to automatically fix it to the right rex format.
Excellent suggestion.
If you can do anything, if you could do something in DCL or C language, then of course it is possible to create a shortcut key for anything.
It's the kind of thing that you always then struggle like, oh, what was the command again?
Yes.
But I would widen that to like batch editing of names or extensions.
Changing the backup save set. If your backup save set is traditional one, that's kind of still big, sort of easy. Difficult problem is if your backup save set is kind of, sort of new one, if you have done it using the /data equals compress, so that it's no longer fixed format. And if you that saves and move over FTP to Windows system, and then FTP to another VMS system, it's gonna be totally so broken. There's apparently no way to fix it. So there's reason for never to use intermediate Windows or Linux system. Always FTP from VMS to VMS.
Yes.
My proposal is enabling the user to define a set of commands, each of which could be activated by possibly one keystroke or so. So the command may be the simple TCL command difference, and then
Yes.
the file name which is selected is inserted there, and so you can a specific command can be executed for the file.
Yes, it's possible.
Mm.
So thank you very much.